You're listening to Radio Cosmos.
All night long.
Bravo! My compliments, little lady.
Commercial!
Break for 30 seconds.
You are now listening to BaaD Radio.
Hello and welcome to BaaD Radio. BaaD stands for Business at a Distance. This is a show about local businesses and business networking. We are here in the News Radio WFLA Orlando studios from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I am your host, Angela Smerito, and in studio with me, we have our producer, Melissa Fox.
I am the master of master control.
It's like Darth Vader or something.
No.
Am I way off on the reference?
Yeah.
Dang
Space
it.
Ghost, coast to coast.
Oh, I should have had that. I would never have gotten that, but okay. Next up, we have Melissa Jacob with Striking Brand.
Hello, hello.
She is our co-host and our videographer. Yay. If you go to baadradio.com, you can see under episodes, you can see all the previous episodes of BaaD Radio. She does a fantastic job for BaaD Radio and for our sponsors. And if you go to strikingbrand.com, you can see all of her other work because she is a videographer and she's also a photographer. Please join me in welcoming Coastal Claims Services Executive Vice President Danielle Robosky.
Hi there.
I said I did it wrong, didn't I?
Oh, you were as close as you were going to get.
Robosky. Robosky. So thanks for coming in today. I'm excited to have you here. We're going to talk all about public adjusting.
Nice.
Do you know what a public adjuster is?
Kind of, only because Brooke is an attorney and she works closely with your kind.
But we're going to talk about that because a lot of people do not know what a public adjuster is or what role they play. But before that, we're going to talk about Frogger's Bar and Grill. If you're looking for a place to go with friends or meet new ones, then you're looking for Frogger's Grill and Bar. With 4 great locations, there is bound to be one near you. Come with friends or bring the family for some food and fun, and don't miss out on Frogger's amazing menu where everything is fresh, never frozen. Oviedo, Mount Dora, Apopka, and Altamont Springs. Frogger's, hopping with food and fun. All right, up for the networking news. You want me to do that again? Okay. So the networking news, we're going to talk about BNI today. But first, we're going to say that our sponsor mentioned is Symphonic CBD, which is a branch of Live Your Best Life, both advocates for Green Compass Global. Green Compass products are USDA organic, lab tested, non-GMO, made in the USA, and cruelty-free CBD products. And they are key in making calmness a habit. They also have CBD for our fur babies. 4th of July.
I was about to say.
Just happened. And do you have any?
We do not.
Okay. We have a dog, Roxy, and she's getting up in age a little bit. And so the older she gets, the fireworks had her just pacing. And so I gave her some CBD and I let her get on the couch, which she's not normally allowed to do. And so she did. It took her a few minutes, but then she settled down next to me. And I could still feel her heart beating fast, but she was calm. It made such a huge difference. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do a post for Symphonic CBD because I saw so many people posting talking about their poor pup.
Oh yeah, for the
pups.
fireworks.
Yeah. But to get more information about that, just go to symphonic-cbd.com. Again, that's symphonic-cbd.com. All right, so we are talking about the networking news, and we were kind of like debating on what we wanted to talk about, and we kept mentioning BNI. So Daniel says, "What is BNI?" And I was like, "Okay." That's our topic.
That's what we're doing.
All right. So I don't know. Let's
BNI.
Yeah. Business Network International.
Yes.
Okay. So BNI is the largest organized networking group in the world. So there are BNI chapters in every country, as far as I know, across the world. So it's not just in Orlando, Florida. It's not just in Canada. It is everywhere. So there are chapters. So let's just talk about Central Florida. When my BNI chapter started right in the midst of COVID, there was 35 chapters in Central Florida. Now I want to say there's probably close to 50.
Yeah, I think it jumped.
Right.
Yep.
So each chapter meets once a week, and BNI, the headquarters is up north somewhere, I think.
I don't actually know where that is.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a business, right? It's not a nonprofit. It's a business because it costs money to be a member in BNI. So you meet once a week and you have your own group. But the cool thing about BNI is that you can network outside of your your group.
So you meet with other BNI chapters. So in each chapter, you have one chair for each profession. So you're not really competing. That's like the difference between BNI and like a Chamber of Commerce type situation.
Yes.
So I would be the only photographer that would be in that chapter. And so everybody that's in that chapter with me is kind of like my personal sales team.
Exactly.
And they will help like refer people to me, and it kind of like funnels them to one type of person, as opposed to a chamber where it's like you could have 5 different
15
exactly.
photographers.
And then it's like it's just kind of luck of the draw type situation, whereas BNI is a little bit more intentional to where you kind of get all of that kind of referrals.
The keys are that you talk to people that you like, know, and trust. And that's so people know that I'm in a BNI, so people will come to me, hey, Angela, I need a roofer. Or, hey, Angela, I'm looking to get this done. Who do you know? I mean, my whole family's trained.
Trained.
Yeah.
I love that.
They are, because they will. They'll be like, okay, I need this done. I need this done. I need this done. And that's just the way it works. Because if there's not anybody in my chapter that does it, there's going to be somebody in BNI that does it. And if somebody is in BNI, they're vetted. So you can, like, if you are a crappy business person, you're not going to make it in BNI.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that they kind of hold you a little bit more accountable. So you need to be present at the meetings, whereas Chamber of Commerce is kind of like whenever you want to be there type situation. You need to be there. You need to be referring to other people that are in your chapter. So it kind of has like that
A report card.
yeah, and like a team player type situation. So if you're a business who like, members have referred people to you and then you just don't answer, or you drop the ball, and then that client comes back to the person who referred you, is like, I don't know what happened, then you're not going to get those referrals, and you'll eventually get kicked out of the chapter. So that's the whole premise, like how you were saying, like if you refer somebody in BNI, they generally are going to be a good business person, because they're there because they put in that extra work and they haven't been kicked out yet.
Yeah. And that's how Melissa and I even met.
Well, the whole time that you were talking about it, I was thinking of it as a process, not an organization. So I was just following along because I understand my brain works in processes. So
Right.
you kept saying BNI, BNI, and I was like, I'm going to catch on to what this is eventually.
I'm sorry.
And then I never did.
Because when we initially did our 1-to-1, I think I sent you my BNI link, and I was like, it's open all the time. So,
Yes, you did.
we just use it. I use our link all the time.
Yeah.
Because it's
What link? What link are you talking
because
about?
we're hybrid. So like Melissa's chapter meets once a week in person.
Right.
My chapter's hybrid. So we only meet once a week, or we meet once a week in person once a month, and then the rest of them are via Zoom. So
So you mean your Zoom link?
my Zoom link.
You're like, just hop on.
It's always there. Like I said, it's open 24/7. So
Right.
anytime I'm like, oh, we need to meet here, this, I don't have to worry about setting it up. I just said, use this link.
Oh, that's
And-
smart. I never thought of that.
And there's no time limit
Oh,
either.
nice.
Because he's like, Daniel's like, all right, you're going to have to kick me off now, because he saw some time thing. I was like, nope, we can talk all we want to.
And we have the same thing where we have the just open-ended Zoom links, and people can jump in, and our different regional managers have them set up all the time. But a lot of times when we get called in, there's always a little ticker in the top corner, and when it gets down to like 0, we start to say, okay, do we need to go? Do we need to be wrapping this up? And
So does that give you a little bit of a better idea of what BNI is?
it absolutely does. Yes.
Because it is an organization. You are held accountable. It does cost money to be a member, but it also changes people's business. It changes the way people do business. For realtors, I think that BNI is an absolute must. Because there's not that much to set them apart in regards to, there's going to be good realtors and bad realtors.
Right.
But lots of times new chapters are made just because somebody wants to be in a BNI chapter, and there's not they can't find that open seat, like a realtor or
Right.
a chiropractor or a personal injury attorney. There's certain categories that are just super, super high
Saturated.
in BNI. I'm not.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's good though.
So I'm able to go to all the different like meetings and network with everybody outside of my specific group.
Yeah, that's
So-
the other good thing, is that what you mentioned, you started to mention it, going to different chapters. So I can go to different chapters that don't have a photographer and then network there as well.
So guess what? You're going to be my guest next week
Yeah.
at my
Perfect.
BNI,
Love
because
it.
we don't have a public adjuster.
Nice.
I would be surprised if there's very many public adjusters who know about it.
All right. All right, you guys, we're going to break, and when we get back, we are going to answer that question, what is a public adjuster? So stay tuned.
honestly thought BMI was body mass index. We'll be right back.
It's
you too.
BNI.
I know, but you know, it's me.
No, no.
We'll be right back with BaaD Radio.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back. And this portion of BaaD Radio is brought to you by Premier Couples Superstar. It is hot, hot, hot out there, so best to plan some inside activities. But first, a trip to Premier Couples Superstore. They have the best selection of lingerie, shoes, toys, games, love oils, clubwear, and so much more. You won't pay those high prices because you'll be going directly to the source. 5009 South OBT, or shop online at premiercouples.net, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Oh, yeah.
It's just part of the read now.
You had to add that little All right, so we are here with Daniel Robosky with Coastal Claims, and we're going to talk about public adjusting. So what is a public adjuster, Daniel?
So a public adjuster is the first and easiest access to an advocate for the insured. So the insurance company is going to have their adjusters, their in-house, or their third-party folks.
Okay, so just roll back.
Mhm.
Okay.
Explain it to me like I'm 5.
We're talking about home claims only. Are we talking about personal injury? Are we talking about, there are so many different fields that we could be talking about with insurance.
We are talking specifically about property insurance
Property.
claims.
Okay.
And so we're the intermediary between the insured, your homeowner, and their insurance company, to make sure that they are indemnified, that they are paid appropriately for the damages that they've incurred, whether it be a hurricane, a fire, tornado, flood, whatever it is. So statistically, carriers will underpay for putting these residential homeowners back to what they were before the peril. We come in, we're allowed to legally argue. Same as a lawyer, but we don't have to. We have different rules that we have to follow. But we're the advocate for the insured, because we know it's like being a mechanic, right? So I can go out and change the oil in my car. I can put gas in my car. I can change the tires. But if you want me to figure out the cylinder compression in my V8, I'm not the guy, right? So I'm gonna find a mechanic to do that.
Right.
That's what we are in the insurance world. We are the biggest advocate for insureds against their insurance company, unfortunately.
You know what's so crazy is that we've had a lot of different we've never had a public adjuster on the show before, but we've had roofers. We've had disaster management people. We've had roofers. And it's the same freaking story over and over again. Is that insurance companies try to back in homeowners. They don't want to freaking pay them what they're supposed to.
And it's so weird, because the understanding, like, if you're not aware, is like they're there to help and protect you and to save you for when bad stuff happens.
There's a whole industry created because of it.
Well, and everybody does. They live in that space where mentally it's the guy they buy their insurance from, especially in small town America, all across the country. It's, well, Jim's State Farm agency sponsors my kid's t-ball team. We've known him for 30 years. He's got my best interest in mind. He doesn't. His
He
bonus
might,
structure.
but
Correct.
The whoever
also,
the policy distributor doesn't.
Correct. And Jim's bonus structure at the end of the year is based on how many claims are filed.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I see. I didn't know
So
that.
they're incentivized to not help, right?
What about
Correct.
insurance agents, though?
It's the same. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So in State Farm is probably the most predominant. When you see, when you drive down the street, you see their red buildings with their white logo on it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
every neighborhood has one.
Well, I see State Farm too. Like there's they seem to do a lot more advertising, but I think it's the individual locations that will be like, okay, I'm going to buy all the not street signs, but the like the bus signs.
Oh yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Things
Benches
like
and
that.
stuff
Benches,
like that.
yeah. So you'll see that, but State Farm's not paying that bill for that advertising. That guy's office is.
Those are all independent franchisees.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
and State Farm is not exclusive to that, but they are the leader in that.
yeah. So so your whole industry has been created to protect homeowners from their insurance companies.
Correct.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
So, but think about this too. So I took my independent adjuster's license exam before I took my public adjuster's, and
I'm sorry, you're what?
the independent adjuster. So independent adjusters will work for the carrier. public adjusters work for the public.
Is that what they say when they're bringing out an engineer?
So legally they have to actually bring an engineer. Here's the problem that lives there. They'll bring out the wrong engineer on purpose because they're just looking for somebody with a stamp. So let's say you have a structural issue. They'll bring out a MEP engineer, which is a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer. Well, that guy has no bearing on structural
Why would they do
issues.
that?
Well, because you don't know any better.
Right.
Right. You just see a guy with a stamp that says engineer on it, and you say, well, he must be right.
Right.
It's the same thing when they send out. They love the phrase forensic engineer. There's no such thing as a forensic engineer. It doesn't exist. There's nobody. You're not going to go to college to become a forensic engineer. It's
Google it.
Forensic accountant maybe, but not forensic engineer.
Right.
So
it's a made up word to make you think that it's got some clout.
So wouldn't the person who doesn't, that's not their specialty, they just make their best assessment? They don't say like, this is not my deal?
So it's the game. It's a chess game all the time. And so I want to circle back for a second to what I was getting ready to say. So one of the exam questions is a whole chunk of things they live in this space where they talk about the law of large numbers. They can statistically deny or undervalue this ridiculous amount of claims because you as the homeowner don't know any better. So if they say your roof costs $5,000 to fix it, you're going to go, I guess I have $5,000 to fix my roof.
Right.
And that is the extent of effort that you are going to put into it, and the vast majority of people. So they're leveraging numbers. So then they're reserving the balance of those for when people actually want to fight, when they hire public adjusters, when they hire law firms. And so they know, and it's a staggering number. It's like above 80% of people will take that initial offer from their carrier because
they don't know any better.
Correct. So then now go into bringing in the wrong engineer or, and I'm sure we'll get into this later today. The idea of a loss consultant is going away in Florida, which we will dive off into that. But they're being hired to perform a task. Very often they're given 3 sentences of a full page to say, I just need you to look at these 3 things and write me a report on them. It's almost like when you see all these TikToks and YouTube clips of something that somebody said, but then you don't get the context that went with it. They don't ever get the context. They're just brought in to do these 1 or 2, 3 things and write a report on it, stamp it, and be done.
And then what? Is it a stalling process? I mean, is that part of it? So they bring out this engineer. He's not qualified to. Okay, so if it's a roof issue and he's like a plumbing expert, so he comes out, and he does his little thing, stamps it, and then what happens?
It is the carrier's interpretation of that language. So they'll say things, and then the carrier will interpret what the words on that report mean and then how they want to use it against you as the insured. So they'll look for things that say should, not shall. They'll look for words that say, more likely than not. They'll look for those key phrases in that report, and then they'll use those against the insured to solidify their position.
Okay. And then, okay, so they send out the improper engineer, and then he files a report, or he does his little report, and then the insurance companies come back and says, okay, based off of the engineer's report, we're going to offer you $5,000 for your roof.
Or deny it.
Or deny it altogether.
Right. And just so everybody's clear, it's not that they always send out the wrong engineer, but we see it. We see it all the time. We do thousands of claims a year. We see kind of every possible scenario that we could. But yeah, they will use that to validate their position. So an engineer is very rarely triggered right out of the gate. You'll see it on tile claims a lot, where tile roofs,
right?
Just because
tile's hard,
it's a lot
expensive.
Yes, and they don't want to pay for those, so they'll trigger an engineer immediately. But usually, an engineer is triggered after a representative is involved, whether it's public adjuster or a lawyer. Correct.
Okay.
So once we send in our letter of representation, depending on the claim, they'll start triggering third-party people. So engineers, if there's a loss of use, because we're seeing a lot of people with Airbnbs now, so they're filing within their property insurance, they have loss of use endorsements. So we have to bring in accountants to figure out that stuff. It's a lot more complex than just the construction side of it.
Right.
But everything that the carrier's ever doing is to position around not having to pay or to minimize what they have to pay you to put you back to pre-loss condition.
Wow, that is scary. And like I said, we just keep hearing this over and over again. All right, so that music means we're going to break. And when we get back, we're going to talk more with Daniel Robosky with Coastal Claim Services.
You were so close.
She nailed it.
I did.
Not
Stuttered.
really.
I
She
stuttered a little bit.
You're listening. Are you listening to BaaD Radio on News Radio WFLA Orlando?
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
And we're back, and this portion of BaaD Radio is brought to you by Forge IT Consulting, providing a fully outsourced IT department with a personal touch for small business. No company is too small. ForgeITConsulting.com. All right, we're talking with Daniel Robosky with Coastal Claim Services about public adjusting. And so this last segment, he kind of talked a little bit more about what a public adjuster is. And so this is my own personal view, is that people understand what an attorney is and what an attorney does, but they don't really understand that there's that the public adjuster is also somebody that they can get to. Now, I know we have a lot to talk about, but real quick, can you tell me what the difference is between using a public adjuster versus going straight to a claims attorney?
At its simplest form,
is it cheaper?
It is usually in most states. It is easy. It is cheaper.
That's a big one.
To go to a claim to an adjuster.
Correct. So through a public adjuster. So law firms will typically scale theirs one of two ways. They will have a very simple 10%, 20%, whatever the state dictates for PAs. They'll do that. And then if it has to go to litigation, then they'll charge their litigation fee. So the easy answer to your question is we can both interpret policies and the language in the policy, but we can't go to court. They can. We can be called into court. We can be deposed, but we can't initiate court proceedings. That's the easiest way to look at it. We can't start the legal process. We can argue, we can negotiate, we can interpret policy, we can go toe-to-toe with the carrier up to the point where they're saying, nope, if you want to win this, you're going to court. That's the difference. And we're capped. Our fees are capped.
Right. So what is a percentage of that happens where it's just like where they're just like, farmers or whatever it is, like, nope, not happening, not paying this. We will pay out so much money in attorney's fees just to not have to pay this.
So you'll see a couple different things. It'll depend on the state. So obviously we're focusing on Florida. There are alternative dispute methods that exist before it has to go to litigation. So we will try the mediation process where the court does get involved, but it's not a I'm not suing you. You're not suing the insurance company, right? We have about 7% of our files go to litigation. So we're able to get to an agreeable settlement prior to that. I don't know the statistic as far as statewide because there are so many lawyers involved in the process without going to litigation. It would be really hard to get, take Brooke, for example, like to ask her, she would probably know because it's her business, but to ask anybody from the outside to look at it and go, well, of the 5,000 claims that you've done, how many of those were actual litigated files as opposed to we ran them as representatives and didn't need to go to litigation, but it happens a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that, like you said, that's really interesting. And again, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, like you said, there is help to be out there without having to go to attorney. Because I know lots of times people are scared of attorneys. Until I got to know a lot of attorneys, I would be scared.
Why?
Because I would be scared the phone call cost me $400.
Well, and we fight with that now. And the two biggest things that we struggle with when we're pitching what we do to people is one, how much it costs and how do they have to pay for it, and secondly, how are we different from a law firm and how does this affect their insurance rate when it's all said and done, right? Everybody thinks it's like a car accident. You get in a car accident, your rate goes up because you did it.
Well, I mean, I've kind of heard now that you get dropped. If you file a claim after you had that, then your insurance company will drop you.
So,
or they won't renew you.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
It is possible, but it's not. It's subjective. So no, it's one of those things where nobody ever gets to really see behind the curtain. We have clients that have filed an insurance claim every year for the last 7 years because they lived in a hail-prone area or whatever, and they've never been dropped. So it's the carrier's always assessing and evaluating their risk. And if they deem you too big of a risk, then they're going to not insure you.
I wonder how they figure that out. Is it based off your property value and like
How
how
much they're
old you
losing?
are? Or
How much money they're losing, keeping
I
you
would,
on?
I would assume it has something to do with how much money they're losing because, you know, like our claims right now, the average claim value here lives around, I want to say it's like $43,000 and some change. That's a big chunk. But then
Right.
when you look at the home values in the areas that were hit by hurricanes, you're talking $1 million homes, multi-million-dollar homes. So 40,000 against $1 million is a drop in a bucket, right?
Yeah.
But $40,000 on a $150,000 house is quite impactful at that point. So
Right.
again, we don't get to see behind that curtain to see how they actually evaluate and determine their risk.
Yeah.
But we help. That's one of the things that public adjusters do that is never charged for, and it's one of those things that people probably need to be more aware of. Is that we do policy reviews. We make sure
That's huge.
that you have the right amount of insurance, because we get into so many claims where clearly an event happened. There's a covered peril by all means and expectations under general policy language. It would be covered. You would get paid for it. You would be indemnified. Everything's great. And then we get in there and there's an exclusion, or we get in there and there's a co-insurance clause where they have to pay up to a certain dollar amount in additional insurance.
Right.
We find those after the fact.
Yeah, we had a guy on the show not too long ago, and he was a great guest. Don't get me wrong,
Don't start like that.
but he made a comment that just like rubbed my, that wrong way. And because we were talking about the contracts, right? And he made a comment. It was kind of like, well, if you sign something that's like, that's got all the stuff on it and you don't read it, shame on you. And I was like,
Most people don't read it.
I'm like, it's 450 pages
Yeah.
long, and I don't understand what it says
Of
anyway.
legal jargon.
And
that
I
you're
was
not
like,
gonna-
so no shame on me. I was like, I don't,
they
what
do
I
that
mean?
on purpose.
I
It's part of
know.
the whole thing.
But so you would take, if I were like, okay, Daniel, we have a new policy. We look at it and make sure that it's good.
100%.
How much would you charge me for that?
0.
Oh, wow.
Sweet.
You
We-
look at it before there's like a problem with the property.
We'll look at it under the assumption that you're never going to call us again.
Okay, wow.
Like
Damn.
there's no benefit to us, because in the event that you do have a loss, that's where the benefit for us comes in, right? Obviously, we want to get paid for what we're doing,
Right.
but we want to get paid because you got the right amount of money. And if you aren't insured appropriately, you're not going to get the right amount of money. So then, what are we doing at that point? Then we have to sit here and go, okay, well, do we charge our entire fee because now they're going to be short? Do we not charge them at all? And, again, I mean,
I'm going to be calling you because my policy renews in October.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like out there shopping and whatnot. But again, I'm like, I don't know. My house flooded with Hurricane Ian, but it flooded. It wasn't wind driven rain or any of that crap. It came from the ground up. Like, because I have a sunken living room and it was a mess. But we had a disaster management company come out and they tried to figure out any way they could to say that it didn't come from the ground, and they couldn't. It came from the freaking ground. It didn't have flood insurance, so guess what?
Well, can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
So there are
We're
those
2 minutes till
tax-
break too. So
Understood. So that is one of the tactics, again, as we kind of cycle back to that. Wind-driven rain, delamination, degranulation. There's all these just made-up things that they want to use. The thing to remember, and this is why representation is important, if they would have come out and you weren't educated at all, you'd say, okay, well, I guess it's a flood. Well, no, your house did flood, but it was subsequent to a hurricane, right? It wasn't, the primary cause of loss wasn't a flood.
are you telling me my insurance could have covered this freaking flood?
Yes.
I think so. I think that's what's happening right now.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I heard.
G.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
OMG.
it's the
Okay.
same thing. We talk about, we have these kind of running jokes in our industry, like we don't talk about Voldemort, right? So there's certain words, mold, we don't
Did
say.
you just reference Voldemort
I
from
know.
Harry
Yes.
Potter?
I
Yes.
know. You're
Do you
talking
know
to
me?
We're going to become best friends.
Okay.
We don't talk about mold. We don't say the word flood. We don't, like, there's a handful of these things that we just do not say. Mold is probably the biggest primary one, because when you look at an insurance policy, the extent of coverage for mold specifically is very low. Usually it's like $5,000 or $10,000, and it costs a lot more than that to remediate. But it's only if mold is the primary cause of loss. And so what the carriers will do is they'll come in and they'll say, no, it's mold. Your house is moldy. Well, it's moldy because of another event. So it's subsequent to that event. But they'll say nope, and they'll try to fit it all in that mold cap.
Wow. Well, we're going to go to break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about how bad Angela got screwed from Hurricane Ian. So stay tuned.
Quietly laugh amongst yourselves. There's no need to point. Made myself laugh. This is BaaD Radio. Oh, yeah. It sure is.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of BaaD Radio is brought to you by Ground Up Property Services. Rainy season is here, so don't make the mistake of over-watering your lawn. Call Recall with Ground Up Property Services about a water sensor. Too much water can be just as harmful as not enough water. And while you're at it, ask about the irrigation system inspection, and don't forget about the lawn painting service. If you're planning an outdoor event and you want to hide those brown spots on your lawn, call 407-468-4295. You can also find Rick at groundupinc.net. All right, we are talking with Coastal Claims Adjuster Danielle Robosky. And before break, we were starting to talk about how my house flooded from Hurricane Ian, and it sounds like I did it all wrong. So let's talk about it a little bit more.
She's not bitter.
Let's say that the potential is there.
Okay.
Let's live there.
So we did not have flood insurance because we're not in a flood zone. When Ian came, I have a sunken living room. So my house was built in 1979, 1980, and that's back when they made the houses all these different levels. And it's cool, but my second living room is my Harry Potter room. So it's sunken down. We just paid to have all hard, laminate floors put in. It was
like the fun room.
Yeah. And it's got a big fireplace with the brick and everything. And so Ian came through. We didn't lose power. We woke up the next morning. We're like, hey, we're good. Right. And then as I was walking by the sunken living room, the shimmer caught my eye. And then we realized that the sunken living room was full of water.
You now have a pool.
Yes. All right. Instead of a sunken living room, we have a swimming pool. And then so we had to get in there and get all of our furniture out. And the floor was floating. And then I find out that the water's toxic because it's Category 3 rainwater. And I'm just like, oh, and my family's in there barefoot digging stuff out. And a nightmare. But I couldn't, we had a disaster management company come out and assess it because we wanted to file a claim. But they advised us that we couldn't because we didn't have flood insurance and that the rain came from the ground up because all the rain came down and like I said, we just had French drains put in so that this will not happen again.
Right.
So FEMA came out. They gave us $300. You know what I mean? It doesn't even pay for the couch or anything. I couldn't.
It's more of an insult than anything. Yeah.
And I'm like, thanks, but no thanks. But and then trying to get somebody to come out and dry the walls for us didn't happen because they wanted $5,000 or $6,000, and then just trying to rent it ourselves, everything was gone. So our walls stayed wet for a long time. We had some people help us with their fans, like the big industrial fans,
right?
And so we had that out there for a while, and then we qualified for. It took me 8 months, but we qualified for an SBA loan, so I got the money for that, and with that money, I put in French drains. Where we had our back patio, our enclosure to our pool got destroyed, so we got that fixed. We got the floors fixed.
What's
you know what I mean?
What's an SBA loan?
A Small Business Administration.
Gotcha.
So the loan, you have to have gone through some event where you had damage, and so it's a huge pain in the butt process. And like I said, it took me 8 months. I applied, I got denied, applied again, I got denied, applied. And then so I just kept applying until finally they're like, oh my gosh, this lady's annoying. And they had somebody come out, assess the damage, and we got approved. So it's a 30-year loan. It's at a really low interest rate. I don't have to start paying on it till next year. And it's given us the ability to do all the things, that we needed to do. But I have to pay it back.
Right.
They put it. It's got a lien on the house because if I can't sell the house till that is taken care of.
So when she mentioned the SBA loan before, you were like,
Oh God.
oh gosh. So tell us.
If you could have just kept checking the wrong box over and over again, the more you told that story.
Oh.
It's just, but here's the fun thing.
no.
We can still fix it, right?
Oh.
So you never filed a claim. So let me say this for anybody who is listening, tell your friends, tell everybody, it is no harm for you to file an insurance claim on your property. It does not hurt you. All it's doing is triggering your insurance company to investigate something, whatever it is, whether you blew it up on accident because you were making something you shouldn't have been doing, whatever.
Right.
You're forcing them to start an investigation. That's it. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't affect your rate. I don't care what your broker, your agent, your buddy, whoever tells you otherwise, they're wrong. It does not hurt you in any way for you to file an insurance claim.
Okay.
Now, with that being said, for you can still file one. And so I came out of the water mitigation space before I became an adjuster.
Oh, okay. So you know
And
all about this.
Everything that you just said made me just my eyebrows go up, my eyes get really wide.
I was looking at you the whole
no.
time.
So here's the fun thing. There's still remediation that can be done at your house. I guarantee it.
Well, we haven't done the drywall yet, so it's still damaged.
Yeah. And so you said category 3 water. So that's as bad as it's going to get, right? There's nothing past that. And that's one of the big arguable points that the carriers love to live in is like they want to say it's category 1 or category 2.
Oh, no. It was straight up hurricane water.
Yeah. So.
And it soaked all into my walls for minimum of 14 days to 3 weeks.
And you haven't replaced it yet.
I haven't replaced it yet. We did get a mold assessment, though, and we're good right now. But it was cold.
Did they do surface and air, or did they?
Surface and air.
They didn't probe. They didn't do any destructive testing. They
No.
didn't drill little holes behind you.
No, not yet.
Oh, he's smiling because he can fix things.
I'm telling you.
Did I finally do something right? Or did I do something
No,
wrong
you
again?
did. You
Okay.
did. They just.
Thank the Lord.
It's one of those things like when you go rent a car, they're like, you want an SUV? They're like, do you want a small SUV, a crossover SUV? Or, like you got the small SUV where you probably should have gotten the big one, but you did something, right? So let's talk about policies for a
I just
second.
wanted to make sure my family wasn't breathing like
agreed.
Black
mold.
mold,
Yeah.
But let's talk about policies for a second. Every insurance policy has a requirement for the policy holder. It's their duty to mitigate against potential further damages. It doesn't mean that you have to fix everything. It means that you have to make an effort to making it less, right? So what you did, you went out and bought fans, you hired a disaster company to come in, you had a mold assessor come in, you've done your duty to mitigate. We just need to file a claim. Like there's still room for you, and then you can potentially recover.
But Ian was, I mean, it hasn't been a year. What
Correct.
is the law now? My policy is from October of 2022. So it's before all these law changes went into effect.
And even once these law changes come in, there's a retroactive period, right? So they're not going to be like, okay, well, now everybody's screwed. There's going to be a space that exists there where anything that's already going on. So we need to get moving.
Do you think the insurance policy will give me money so I can pay the start of the SBA loan back?
I'm going to say, without looking at your policy, without really doing an assessment, the possibility is there. Yes.
Okay, say that again because Melissa was talking to me in my ear and I couldn't hear what she said.
Without seeing your policy and how it's written and any random exclusions that you may have, if we're just making an assumption off of general policy language, yes, the possibility is there that we can recover that. Now, the things that you paid, use the SBA loan to pay for, those are betterments. So putting in French drains that didn't, your policy more than likely doesn't cover betterments, but they needed to cover something in there. So there's a puzzle to put together here, but I would confidently say that we should be able to recover something unless there's something crazy in your policy that obviously I haven't been able to see.
Yeah, damn! I wish he was an SB or an BNI because then it would be such a good referral.
Yeah. Hey, the good news is that he'll be able to help you.
Right? This is
after
kind
the
of
fact.
exciting.
So yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of sad that I didn't know all this before.
But think about this. Like, we're sitting here having this conversation because you're active in the space. You're active in what the state's doing to policyholders, and you didn't know this.
Yeah, so imagine
what everybody else down the street doesn't know.
Yeah, well, you know what? We're going to go to break in a little bit, but we have a little bit of time right here. But I want to talk about this whole wind-driven rain crap because to me, that was a real legitimate thing that if it didn't come through the windows or down the chimney or something like that, if it came from the ground up, then I was SOL. But that's not the case.
Correct. It's not the
Okay.
case.
All right. We're going to talk about wind-driven rain when we get back from break. So stay tuned.
Woo, that sounds like a real knee slapper. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. If you got messed over too, like Angela, stay tuned. Sorry. This is BaaD Radio on News Radio WFLA Orlando. News is next. We'll be back.
You're listening to Radio Cosmos.
All night long. Bravo! My compliments, little lady.
Break for 30 seconds.
You are now listening to BaaD Radio.
Welcome back as we launch into the second hour of BaaD Radio. I'm going to run through all the regular info for those of you who might have just joined us. I am Angela Smarito, your host, and we've got our producer, Melissa Fox.
Hey, hey.
Our co-host and videographer, Melissa Jacob.
That's me.
And her business is called Striking Brand, and you can watch all of previous episodes of BaaD Radio on baadradio.com. You can also go to strikingbrand.com to see all of Melissa's other work, which is going to be photography and videography. And so for the first hour, we were talking with Daniel Robosky, just like Lebowski, from Coastal Claims. And we're going to talk with him some more for the second hour as well. I wanted to have Daniel on for the full 2 hours because obviously I have a spot and for this whole topic. And it sounds like I have even more of a spot for this topic because it affects me a little bit more than I actually thought it did. So
And it's nice for everybody, hurricane season coming up and all of that.
Well,
We're in hurricane season.
And tell me, is it true that the waters like in the tropics are like 2 to 10% hotter? So that indicates more storms.
So we generally look at the Gulf. So whenever the Gulf is warmer, so it is prone to produce more storms. What that does is it changes our lead time for storm visibility to a couple days, where if it does, where hurricanes typically will form off the Horn of Africa, we usually have 7 to 14 days to kind of really see what they're going to do. If one were to spin up in the Gulf of Mexico on the Tampa side, we would have a couple days to react to that, more as opposed to a couple weeks. So, and the Gulf is unseasonably warm, but the hurricane forecasts for this year are still living. They're saying that it's going to be similar to last year. I think they were calling for 4 or more Category 3 storms. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to make landfall. That just means that they're going to exist.
I know. It felt like there was just one after another. Like, you know what I mean? As far as like, didn't they like run out of names for them? And so they had to started giving them letters or something crazy like that.
Yeah, they made some weird stuff up a couple years ago because they have a list of names and they know what they are. So like next year it's going to be this list of names. But there was something having to do with them being subsequent to the first storm that they were Zeta and
That's what I'm thinking of.
It was Laura. Was it Laura? Hurricane Laura came through, and then it was Delta and Zeta.
Right.
No idea why they came up with those, but yeah.
Yeah. I would hate to have the name of a hurricane that like completely like Katrina or something that was just like totally Andrew. And then, you know, when somebody says the name, they're just like, you're associated with some horrific event.
That's true. That's true.
Don't be a Hurricane Angela.
Oh, just watch the baby names. Whenever hurricanes hit, baby names of that named hurricane spike.
Really?
Yep.
Spike?
See, I would be the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Floridians and Texans have the whole hurricane party thing down.
Yeah.
And so they get
Okay.
wild, and then they name their kids after the hurricane.
Oh, you mean because I get it now. So, no, that used to be a thing. Like, when I was in my drinking days, hurricane parties were the best. Until I really became a homeowner and I realized how expensive things and how, you know, complicated things are when they get damaged. Then that's when I was really like, okay, go away, storm. You know what?
Yeah.
Just be gone. I don't care if we're going to have a party. So,
Be gone.
so I do.
Wind-driven rain.
Yes, I do want to talk about wind-driven rain because that is something that I've heard a lot about. And from what my understanding is wind-driven rain is what my insurance companies cover, and that is when that is driven so hard from a storm that it goes through your window, it leaks through a window or a door or a chimney, that it doesn't come from the ground up.
So you're mostly right.
Okay.
It is exactly what it sounds like, right? It is rain that is driven by wind. Now, I'm going to give you an analogy to try and make it make a little more sense. So you have car insurance, right? And you're driving down the road and the transmission fails on your car. You're not filing an insurance claim because your transmission failed, right? But the transmission failing might have caused you to run off the road, blow a tire, whatever. So think about that as your house. The wind-driven rain argument is stemmed from your windows or your doorways being faulty. That's not the insurance company's fault. Your lack of upkeep to your property is not the insurance company's fault, so therefore they wouldn't have to pay for it. So if wind drives rain through the faulty seals on your window and it floods your kitchen or your bedroom or whatever, it's not really the insurance company's fault.
I
right?
thought that's that's the only way that they would cover it if it came through.
Well, it would if it destroyed a functioning seal or window. So think about it like this.
But how do you prove that?
So this is a carrier tactic because exactly. So we're always playing this game of you have to prove me wrong. So either we're able to present stuff on the front and say, well, you have to prove me wrong, or they're able to produce stuff initially, and then we have to prove them.
It's like a board game.
It is always, yeah, it is. And so think about it like this, those old horror movies when storms would come rolling through and the windows would fly open and they'd shatter and rain would get in. If the window was a functioning window, not faulty in any capacity, then that would be covered. But if it had faulty seals and hadn't been updated since 1975 and it was an old single pane window, and because you didn't upkeep your property, then it wouldn't be covered.
Okay, so that's tactic.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely it is, in every sense of the word.
Okay, so what you're saying is they're still going to deny your claim if you're from wind-driven rain.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, absolutely. And again, just by and large, they're going to deny your claim. Statistically, they're going to either deny or undervalue or below deductible your claim. So if you have a $5,000 deductible, they'll open coverage, but for $4,700.
Right.
So you have to pay, and they're not obligated to any financial portion of that.
But what were you said something earlier about like the flood happened in my house because of the hurricane.
Correct. So the wind-driven rain argument would only apply for your house if, again, not to say they wouldn't use it in some other capacity, but it should only because the hurricane brought in the floodwaters and the rainwater.
And we got 22 inches of water in like 12 hours.
Right, which is insane.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah. So let's say a second-story window would have blown open because it was a crappy window. Again, we have to go back to you have to maintain your car. It's not the car insurance company's fault if your transmission blows, your engine blows because you didn't change the oil, whatever. Your house is the same way. You have to upkeep your property. It's not, and this is where the waters get muddy, so to speak, is because a lot of people, when they have to file an insurance claim, then they start walking around going, oh, well, I never noticed that water spot, or this windowsill was not this way. The caulking around this doorway was not and it was. They just hadn't upkeeped it in years. And then they try to get their insurance companies to pay for things that they should have been taken care of as the homeowner. So if I'm the carrier, and I don't like defending the carrier, but I also don't want to pay for things that I shouldn't have to pay for.
So even though, so the flood would have not happened if the hurricane didn't happen. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
That's why I still should have filed a claim?
Absolutely. Because the hurricane brought the wind, the rain, and the floods.
Okay.
And wild animals and whatever else came out of the water, right? So all of those things happened because of the hurricane. It's just like a tornado, right? If a tornado were to roll through and damage every house down the street but didn't destroy your house, you're going to file a wind claim. The wind existed because of a tornado a mile away, right? So you have to find the primary cause of loss and file the claim that way.
And so
in this particular case, it's a hurricane claim. I no longer care if the water rose from the ground, if it came rushing in over the hill, if you're, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter at that point. My job and every other public adjuster in the country or law firm, our job is to find the primary cause of loss and get the carrier to pay for it based on it being a covered peril.
Right. So that's what they're going to say. They're going to say it's a flood. She doesn't have flood insurance.
Correct.
End of story. And you're going to be like, well, no.
Right.
This
Well,
is
by and large, you're going to go, oh, I guess I don't need to file a claim. I don't have the insurance.
that's exactly what I did.
And so then
I didn't even try.
Yeah. So then everything that they did worked.
Oh my gosh.
Bamboozled.
I'm a sucker.
Yeah.
You've been hoodwinked.
Oh goodness. Oh well. You know what? Live and learn, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds like I still got some hope.
Yeah,
so-
some hope, and you're teaching other people not to go do the same mistake.
Right. So we're going to talk about more of Angela's mistakes when we get back.
I love you.
So stay tuned for more BaaD Radio.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I think I'll stay tuned too. BaaD Radio. Go to the website, BaaDradio.com. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio. This portion of BaaD Radio is brought to you by Rachel Roach Realty, a Coldwell Banker Realtor. With a sea of realtors out there, choose the one that thinks about you first and not their commission. 407-252-4566. And we're talking with Daniel Robosky with Coastal Claim Services, and we've had a very interesting discussion about what happened to me. So it's been very eye-opening to me, and I have a feeling it's probably been very eye-opening to a lot of the people that are going to listen to this show.
Yeah,
so what would be my next steps now? So I send you the videos and send you my policy?
So you're kind of in a unique situation because we're talking about it here on the show. Under normal circumstances, ideally what would happen is we would get called in before anybody ever calls their insurance company, right? Because then we're able to put everything together. We're able to form an argument before they've even been engaged.
Yeah.
And that helps, right? You're giving yourself the leg up there.
Yeah, and that's one something too that I think that I mentioned to you is that we've been so conditioned that if we have home damage, the first thing that we do is call our insurance company. But in reality, that's the wrong thing to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And because again, when you say call your insurance company, it is call your agent. Who's again, I always like to make the reference, it sponsors your kid's t-ball team, because I know growing up for us, that's what it was. It was always, Jim Gross State Farm. On the
Yeah, I
back of all
know.
the t-shirts.
I think about my softball team was sponsored by
Yeah.
some
So
insurance.
that's everybody's knee-jerk reaction. They're like, okay, I have something that I believe my insurance company should cover. I need to call my agent. And then the agent goes, okay, we'll go get 3 bids from 3 contractors. Tell me how much it's going to be, and then we'll start working on the process from there. It's hurtful to the process for you to do that, because you're allowing then the carrier to say, well, I'm going to pick the cheapest one, because they always do, right? Anytime you're playing the rule of threes, they're going to pick the cheapest one no matter what.
Right.
So the earlier that you can get a claim representative in, the better it is for the entire process, because we're also arguing with less people at that point too.
Right.
So if we are able to assign one of our PAs to a file, they're able to get all the photo documentation together. They've done the policy review to make sure there's no weird endorsements or exclusions in there that we need to pay attention to. We've packaged everything, so we submit that when we submit our letter of representation to the carrier. They have everything they need.
Right.
If we do our job appropriately, they have everything that they need. Now, they're going to argue it, but they can only argue so much. Now, if we leave things open-ended, then they can form their own opinion. They can
Right.
try to position themselves.
They can fill where they want to.
Right.
Mhm.
And from what I heard too is that when you call a claim too, they try to catch you into saying things,
Mhm.
and that all of a sudden you said something and it was if like you said the word flood. You said the word flood. Oh no, this is done. We're deny because you said the word flood, or you mention a date and they're like, oh well, there was no storm in the area at that time. You know what I mean? Like they try to trick you.
And
so.
I never knew how many people were experts on identifying mold until I got into this industry. Everybody can just pick it out. Like if it was a police lineup, they're going to get it every single time. And it's amazing to me the confidence that people have. Are like, that's mold. I'm like, well, no, it's not.
I was about to say, are you being sarcastic or are you being for
100%,
real?
100% sarcastic. But I'll give you an example of what you were just saying. So I did a claim in Dallas 2 years ago, and it was a tile roof, and it was maybe it was 3 years ago. It doesn't matter. A tornado came through Dallas, of all places, and she was 3 or 4 miles out of the track, and the tile needed to be replaced. Because the carrier didn't agree to pay the tile, she got rain in and
More
flooded,
damage happened.
flooded down the walls.
I
and
guess you can't really tarp a tile roof, can you?
You can, but there's a specific way to do it, and a lot of contractors don't know how to do it, but they want to because it gives them a little bit more clout. But anyway, so she had rain get in, interior damage happened on both floors, and so we're walking around with the carrier. We had this whole thing packaged up. It looked great. He was buying everything that we were telling him on the roof. We get inside and we're pointing out water stains and bulging in the crown molding and all this other stuff. And while we're having the conversation, she goes, yeah, this part's been like this for like 3 years. But that's new. Denied everything.
Oh.
And we prep a lot of homeowners, and we definitely don't want them to lie.
Right.
But sometimes not saying anything is what you need to do.
Well, I was in the situation once. This was years ago where they changed my statement and said that I noticed it on a certain date when that wasn't what I said at all.
Changed completely what you said. Wow, fun.
But the roofer was standing with me at the time, and I think he was recording it or something. He had my back.
Good.
And so he was able to say, no, this is what was said.
And we have remedies for that too. We can file EUOs, examinations under oath. We can do that. We just had one in our office the other day. Lady was 97 years old.
Oh.
She was struggling to understand what was going on. Her statements seemed conflicting. So we requested an EUO with the carrier. They sent in their legal representative, and we all sat in a room. We got a recorded official statement from her of what happened, and then that's what's used. So anything outside of that's no longer binding.
Yeah.
So there's tools that we can use to solidify the position, but a lot of times contractors and homeowners are our biggest adversities. A lot of times we know what the carrier is going to do, generally, right? But sometimes we'll get contractors who want to. And not to take away from any of them, but they want to kind of flex their own muscle a little bit and be like, well, I know this.
Right.
You do. I got it. 100%. Just
You're the man.
Stop using words. That's what I need you to do right. And the same thing with homeowners, right? I mean, because who knows your home better than you do?
Right.
If I just walked in tomorrow and I've got a camera and I took 100 photos, I don't know your house.
Oh, you'd love it. You see Harry Potter stuff everywhere.
Right. But I don't know the creaks in the floor. I don't know whatever.
Right.
And so it's easy to want to insert your own version of that story into that conversation with the carrier. And a lot of times it's detrimental.
It would be fun, though, this is the way that I feel. I feel like it would be very, very advantageous for everybody to have a public adjuster in their phone.
Yes.
That when their policy needs to be redone, they have their agent. Their agent says, okay, these are the ones you can choose from. You take those, and you have somebody like Daniel look them over. He becomes your friend, somebody that you trust. And then this is another thing I heard as well, is that it's our due diligence as policyholders that when we have damage done to our house, we're supposed to call a public adjuster first before we file that claim. We're supposed to assess the damage. And then once the damage is assessed, then call our insurance companies. But we're not trained that way.
Yeah, that would be the perfect scenario. But again, you're not trained that way. You see Jake from State Farm on the commercials. You hear the what's that guy's name? He's got that real deep raspy voice as the Allstate commercials.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Like, I'll just give me him and Morgan Freeman, and I'll just take a nap. But that's what people see, so they believe that those people have their best interest in mind, and they don't.
But they have all the money, and they're doing all the advertising, and you just don't see a lot of public adjusters doing any advertising. Why?
I wish I knew the answer to that question. We have a lot of social media influencers in our industry, but that's the same as it is on the contracting side, whether it's PAs, law firms. You see a lot of law firms.
They got money. I mean, they they're spending bank.
They are, and billboards are expensive.
Yeah.
But the law firms that you see doing it, they handle all different types.
I know. I meant Morgan & Morgan. I mean, I don't know about Dan Newland, but Morgan & Morgan does a ton, and I'm actually kind of a fan of Morgan & Morgan simply because I know several Morgan & Morgan attorneys, and they're good people.
We do a lot of work with them.
Yeah. There's this guy named Hans Kennan who's on a show that's on here, Contractor Talk with Richie Kidwell, and the guy's great, but he makes so much sense when he talks, but it's just getting that information to enough people is the hard part. And this is what it is with public adjusters: is having a public adjuster on your phone isn't going to cost you money.
Right.
If your houses get if your house gets damaged, it's not going to cost you money to call the public adjuster and have you come out and assess it, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I wouldn't know that. And you get that when the policy renews, and it's like all those papers, and I'm just like, I'm looking at it like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or not.
Well, and again, you have to understand too, your agent has incentives, right?
Right.
So let's say that the carrier comes up with some new verbiage that they want to, some new endorsement that they're like, well, if you have a pink pony, you get 10% off your rate, whatever.
Pink pony.
Right.
I'm buying it.
Yep. So they're incentivized to sell you that product. What homeowners need to realize is you can sue your agent for not providing you with the proper policy.
Oh, shoot. Did you know that?
No.
Me either.
We see it a lot.
Really?
We see it a lot. I did a church. I know we're running out.
Oh,
but-
here, let's leave it with that. We're going to talk about a
Okay.
church when we get back from break, so stay tuned.
We're learning a lot here, aren't we? This is BaaD Radio. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Liberty Property Inspections. Your home is one of your most important investments, so don't trust it to just anyone. LibertyPropertyInspections.net, helping you protect your investment. All right, so for the last 1.5 hours, we've been talking with Coastal Claims Services, Daniel Robosky, and we're going to continue on with this. And so before break, we were about to talk about churches.
Yes.
This was a story, right?
It was. So the premise here is that your agent is responsible for providing you with at least the option, right? It's just like your car insurance. If the state says you have to have a certain amount of coverage, but then they give you different options in kind of a tier, your agent, your broker, whoever, has to provide you with those as well. And they have to make sure that you are insured at a minimum to the value of your property. So
And what the state says you have to have.
Correct. So if you have $1 million home, you have to have at a minimum $1 million in coverage, right? And are there exceptions to this? Yes, they're very few and far between. But
Right.
generally speaking, if you have $1 million house, you have to insure it for $1 million. No, there's no argument in this, right? So I did a church a couple years ago, and the total claim value ended up being around $25 million.
Oh, wow.
They were massively underinsured. The total claim value should have been about $37 million, but they were capped at 25 because that's what their broker had sold them. And they didn't know this until their church was hit by a
So
tornado.
the church sued the broker?
I would assume that they did, yeah.
Oh, I would be like, stick it to him, church.
Yeah. Now the church was slimy themselves.
Oh, okay. Well, then
um,
that's not good.
Point being
No.
that you take a church who has a large commercial policy and they were underinsured by $12 million. How often do we think this happens with a homeowner who has a $100,000 to $500,000
Right.
house? Probably pretty often.
But wouldn't an agent want to make sure that they're covered to the full capacity that they could? Like, don't they make more money the bigger policy they sell them?
I would assume so, but again, not being able to see behind the curtain, there's got to be a transference of liability that caused that somewhere, right? They said, well, if we insure it for this or add this endorsement in, we're increasing our risk, or
That's true.
the guy was just negligent and wrote it wrong.
Right.
They didn't-
That's what I would actually think would be the case more than not.
But every insurance agent and broker has to carry errors and omissions coverage in case they make an error.
So you said that some homeowners sue often?
Oh yeah, I don't know how often, but it happens, right?
What attorney field would cover that?
Well, a lot of times, so we can look at it in two different veins. We can look at it from a lawsuit and suing the agent. We can also, they carry errors and omissions insurance, so you can file a claim against your agent's insurance, and they have to pay out after their diligence is done. So there are remedies, but again, the masses by and large have no idea that these things exist,
Yeah,
and
no
they
way.
have no idea that you can go down these roads and that you can actually hold your insurance company accountable.
That's amazing. So tell me a little bit about Coastal Claims Services.
So we are arguably, by volume, the largest PA firm in the country. Now, by dollar, there's a handful of PA firms that probably trump us pretty significantly. We do thousands of residential claims primarily every single year. We do a decent amount of commercial, but our focus is typically on residential because we cover such a broad spectrum of geographic space that residentials are where we're gonna make our money.
I'm curious though, because we talked a little bit earlier about advertising,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't really see a lot of public adjuster companies advertising
At all.
At all. So where do you get your leads from?
So a couple of different places. Everybody leverages their own network, right? So we have right now we have 48 active public adjusters, and for the most part, they leverage their own personal relationships. They will leverage relationships that they have with contractors.
So contractors are a good source of referrals.
They are a good referral source for us.
Okay.
Yes. We have to be careful though. We can't have a space where there's exclusivity, right? So we can't say ABC Roofing sends us every single one of their claims regardless, right? We start to get into some ethical issues at that point.
Is it a legal thing too?
It is, because the idea is that I can't gain financially from work product that you do, right? So if you're a roofer and you send me everything, I'm financially gaining from jobs that probably don't even need us. And we tell people that all the time. Like, we'll tell you if you don't need us. We'll also coach you into what you do need. Because a lot of times the answer is very easy. A lot of times the answer is, no, just tell the carrier this, this, and this. And we help people that way.
I sound like I needed a coach big time.
Yeah, and we don't charge for that. We're not going to put our fee on top of that. We're taking away from somebody that took us, 10 seconds to be like, no, tell them to read endorsement 13A and get back to you. And a lot of times that'll solve it. But anyway, so as far as referrals go, that's
So each agent is out there networking, bringing referrals in.
Adjuster.
So, adjuster.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. So adjuster. So that's really, so they're responsible for their own number.
Yeah. Word of mouth is where we do. I mean, very rarely do you see anybody advertising. There's a couple PA firms. I know there's a gentleman in Hawaii that he's the only public adjuster in Hawaii, and he'll throw up a billboard every once in a while. But
That's one that I wouldn't think would need to advertise if he's the only one in Hawaii.
well, it's because nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows he exists. I mean, I went and worked at Tornadoes in Bowling Green, Kentucky, was it 2-3 years ago? And everywhere I went, they were like, "You're a what?"
Yeah,
I
I said,
know.
I'm a public
You
adjuster.
said that in certain places, like in Texas, you said there's so many public adjusters.
Yeah, in New England, like the entire New England area flooded with PAs. And I didn't know that when I got into this industry. Texas, there's a ton. Florida, there's a ton. But then like we can't work in Arkansas, Alaska, Alabama. We have a kind of joke. If it starts with an A, we can't do anything.
Yeah, that's weird. But I think that I see a huge void here as far as people's in education when it comes to public adjusters. So when I see a void, I see opportunity. I see a huge growth opportunity, which I think is, like I said, is phenomenal because I'm in advertising, and that's what, you know what I mean. When I see the potential for growth in an industry that's not saturated, I'm like, hell yeah, let me get on that because it's open for the taking.
Your public adjusters that have good traction and a very large book of business, for the most part, it is because they have really good relationships with HOAs. They will leverage their own church that they go to. If they live in an apartment building, and then that spreads, right? So hotels are a big thing. There's a huge thing. I think it's called the Asian Hotel Owners Association or something, and these guys own 10 million hotels across the country, and it's kind of like the BNI thing, right? They all talk to each other. They all figure out which brand they want to start doing, whatever. And there are PAs and law firms that get in well with those. Our law firms are another great reference source for us because, like you said, a lot of times the homeowners will call a lawyer, and sometimes the existence of a lawyer scares a lot of people away. But when they do, for a lot of times for a lawyer, it's easy to be like, well, no, this one doesn't fit for us, but call this public adjuster.
But the lawyer sometimes will call you in, though, right?
So we do a lot of what we call litigated support files for them, where we'll go out and we'll do the investigation, and they're going to handle the claim, but we're doing all the legwork for them.
Gotcha.
Because we're spread out. You take, with the exception of companies like Morgan & Morgan or a handful of other law firms, we're spread out all over the country. And so we have 3 offices in Florida. We have 2 offices in Texas, 1 in Pennsylvania. We're getting ready to open 1 in Nashville and 1 in Denver. We're all over the place. And so it's easier for a law firm to call us and be like, hey, do you have a guy in Nashville? We do. Hey, do you have a guy in somewhere in North Carolina.
Right.
Hey, we do. Hey, you got one in Atlanta? We do.
And you guys are the ones that are all educated on the cost of goods. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, like if you're going to go and assess damage, you're going to be like, you have the information backing it of how much that's actually going to cost.
Yes, there's two different schools of thought there. So first, let me say that every PA that we have, I'm almost positive, and I can go back and double check, and we can talk about it later, but I'm almost positive every public adjuster that we have come from the contractor space. A lot of times you'll see guys come from the carrier side. They just get tired of the carrier's crap, and they switch sides. But almost every one of ours, I'm pretty sure comes from the contractor side. So we're already from that space. We already know how much it costs to put on shingles. We know how much it costs to frame walls. We know how to do all those things, so we know the costing.
Well, we're going to break, and when we get back, we're going to wrap up this show. And I think that, like I said, we're going to talk really a little bit more about coastal claims and what you need to do to get ready for hurricane season. So stay tuned.
Will do. It's BaaD Radio on News Radio WFLA, Orlando.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
I'd like to give a huge thank you to our sponsor, Bolts Legal. Fear no storm with boltslegal.com. 33 tanning spa with locations in Altamont Springs and Longwood. Andrews Law PA, auto accident attorney. Contact Andrews Law PA today at andrewslawpa.com. Crazy Muscle Nutrition with a new address at 1015 Unit 129 State Road 434 in Castleberry. All right, so we've been talking for, like I said, the last hour and 45 minutes now with Coastal Claims Services, Daniel Robosky, and we're going to be wrapping up the show here. So really what I wanted to talk about is what's some advice that you would give to homeowners right now as we are like getting into the thick of hurricane season?
Obviously, just take some time and Google like the hurricane preparedness plan, because everybody's stuff's going to be different, right? Everybody's house is laid out different. Their family dynamic is different. If they have animals, whether it's dog, cats, horses, whatever, make sure that you have the basic necessities set aside, right? If you can afford a generator, go get a generator. All of those things to just kind of decrease the impact on your quality of life, because if in the event another category 3 or better storm were to come through, you're going to have to weather that. And for some people, they were fortunate where their neighborhood didn't lose power and they didn't lose all their food and stuffed in their freezers or whatever. But then on the flip side, you had people that went weeks without any power.
Yeah. We had a previous guest that said taking photos is a great idea.
It is. It absolutely is. So that's
timestamp photos.
Yes, and especially if you're going to end up potentially having to file a claim, having that photo documentation on the front end, because one of the carrier's biggest, most commonly used arguments is, well, that's pre-existing.
Well, that's what you said. It's kind of like, prove me wrong. And if you have the photos, then that's backing.
Now, is it cumbersome for you to walk through your house and go through every junk drawer and be like, I have 47 iPhone cables. I have
boxes, cell phone boxes.
Oh, no.
You never want to throw them away.
You don't have to do that. You can literally
Your windows.
hit your video, walk in your front door,
Right.
do a lap in every room, because the quality of cameras nowadays, I can pause it and zoom in on whatever's on the nightstand or what's in the kitchen or whatever. So also make sure that things are put away that you don't want people to see when you're doing that. But you'd be
Premier
surprised.
Couple Superstore.
There you go. You'd be surprised how many people's photos that we get, and we're like,
Hey,
let's go ahead and skip past this one.
Maybe they want to make sure it's covered.
Couples that play together stay together, baby.
They want
Look,
that
for some
back.
people, that's an investment.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Right?
So, but yes, so photo documentation or video. Here's the thing. Anything is better than nothing. And we always say in our industry, he with the most documentation wins. So the more data that you can give us in the event of a claim, the better off that we're going to be. Following that, though, I would say don't worry about filing a claim. Just file it. It's not going to impact your rate.
Call a public adjuster first, have them come in and then file.
Yes.
Because we're rewriting the whole the way we're going to do this.
And it's great. I think it is information that people need to have, because, like you said, they don't have it, and by and large, they either know that we exist and have had a bad experience with a public adjuster who didn't perform well for them, or they don't even know that we exist. And so the only two options for most people are call a lawyer or call my agent, and a lawyer can get you going in the right direction 100%, and they can probably handle your claim if it's the right lawyer.
Right.
Your agent does not have your best interest in mind, unfortunately. They're while they will have empathy for you because they know you and whatever.
Right.
At the end of the day, their pocketbook is affected by what you're about to do. And self-preservation is crazy sometimes.
Always the name of the game.
So
Mm-hmm.
just prepare, in Florida and Texas and, any of the Gulf states, we're not immune to hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so from June to November, at any given time, we could be subjected to one. And having at least the bare necessities, if you just kind of look at the entire scenario and go, if I were to lose power and I had no access to anything for a few days, what is the least impactful thing that I can do? Like, what can I insert into this space that reduces the stress, reduces that
Right.
anxiety? And because it is, and especially if you have young kids, they're going to, they're all going to lose their iPads and they're not going to be able to play their video games.
Yeah.
And,
The world's going to end.
Yeah.
They don't
No.
have it.
so it's
Accurate.
stressful enough for you as it is. Then insert all of these just minor
Right.
inconvenience. We call it scratching the front door. I'd rather have somebody just kick it in than sit
Yeah.
there and scratch. And the scratching the front door is those little things like, hey, I can't find a lighter to light the candles.
So I'm curious about another thing too is with the law changes, like with the SBA 2A that went into effect, it has capped attorneys' fees. Do you see that the public adjusters are going to become more prevalent as people start to realize that? I mean, from what I understand is that just a lot of claims attorneys are going to be like, that's not worth my time because
Right.
I can't make the money that I should be making on it. And
Right.
So I think you're going to see two different things. You're going to see first, there's going to be a wave of lawyers who are going to try and stick it out, and they're going to find a way to make it work. And we're already starting to see,
I
some
told
of
Brooke,
those
I was like,
things.
there's got to be a workaround, girl. There has to be. You guys are way too smart.
yes, and I think there is. I think what's going to happen is they're going to reserve themselves to just navigating the claim process and not trying to take them to litigation. They become creatures of habit, right? If I'm a lawyer and I know that that parachute is always on my back, it's going to be easy for me to go, okay, I'll just pull the cord.
Right.
Because that's always there.
Right.
That has never, you're essentially reducing yourself to being a PA, which we're able to do millions of dollars worth of claims
Right.
every year. So you can do that too. And I think you're going to see a lot of lawyers shift into just PAing, in quotes, claims and not necessarily push to get them into litigation.
Right.
What everybody needs to understand about these law changes, though, is it does not take away from bad faith claims. So a lot of lawyers, that's where they make their money, is forming the bad faith argument of that your carrier is not acting in good faith.
Oh, I see.
So we use litigation as a tool
Mm-hmm.
for handling claims. We do mediation, we do appraisals, we do appraisal leads to umpire. And then if none of that stuff works, then we kind of reserve ourselves to being able to use litigation as a tool.
Right.
If your carrier's not acting in the best interest of you and they're acting in bad faith, they're just flat out denying things that everybody
Right.
know to be factually accurate, then you sue them for bad faith, a bad faith claim. That's where a lot of law firms make their money. So that's still going to exist. That's not going away. What's going away is them having the ability to pull that cord and pull the parachute and then say, well, I can charge my lawyer fees on above and beyond this. So if it takes a year, it doesn't matter because you as the insured is not being impacted by that.
Right.
I'm going to make my money. It's not taking away from you. While I agree with that system, I think it's great. Florida is one of the last standing states that do it. You go anywhere else in the country.
Well,
you
no,
don't
didn't we
see it.
just lose that though? Right.
Well, you're going to lose it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it went into effect.
I think it's September 1. It's either July 1 or September 1.
I know that any policy that was written after December 16th, that it applies. So yeah, those will be expiring
Yeah.
coming up in the next couple of months.
Mm.
That includes me because, like you said, mine comes in October.
Yeah.
So, so as far as coastal claims is concerned, very large group of businesses. But I mean, you said that you're opening more offices?
Mhm.
Is that what you're planning on doing? Is just growing and growing and growing?
Yes. Yeah, our goal is growth. And so we did a year of very aggressive prescribed growth. And then we're coming into the tail end of the second year where we've kind of balanced out and then we're refining processes and prepping for another year of growth.
Gotcha.
So our intention is to be the kind of flag bearer, standard bearer for our industry to say, This is what it looks like when you have good processes and procedures in place. This is what it looks like when you are no longer a mom and pop's business. You treat yourself like a corporation.
Right.
This is what it looks like when you can be profitable with lower margins because you're effective in what you do.
Yeah. No, that's all fantastic stuff for real. And believe it or not, we're coming to the end of the show. So right now, what I want you to do is give everybody all your contact information and how to get in touch with you.
So first you'll go to coastalclaims.net. On there is a portal to file an insurance claim. There's our office at coastalclaims.net or contact at coastalclaims.net. And you can reach me directly at daniel@coastalclaims.net, or you can call me at 270-925-8935. That is my cell phone number, and I will take insured calls all the time.
Awesome.
All right. And you can find me at www.strikingbrand.com. You can email Melissa at strikingbrand, or you can find me Striking Brand on all social media platforms.
And I'm Angela at BaaDradio.com. A huge thank you to our sponsors, and thank you for tuning in. Have a great week, everyone.
We'll do it again next Sunday from 11 until 1. BaaD Radio on News Radio WFLA Orlando. See you next week.